On a warm spring afternoon, in a town where life unfolded quietly, behind polite smiles and neatly kept lawns, 6-year-old Laya played joyfully beneath the sprawling branches of an oak tree, unaware her world was about to shatter. Moments later, she vanished, without a whisper, leaving behind only her scattered dolls and an empty swing still swaying gently in the breeze. For 8 agonizing years, Caroline, her mother, endured the hollow ache of hope that refused to fade, haunted daily by unanswered questions and a silence no mother should know. Then, on an ordinary day, a forgotten jacket and a faint noise drifting from a neighbor's barn would tear open old wounds and offer Caroline a glimpse of a truth more chilling than she ever imagined. Within the shadowy walls of that barn lay not only secrets that would stun an entire community, but also the fragile promise of a reunion, proving that some bonds remain unbreakable even through darkness and time. Caroline had always found comfort in the quiet rhythms of their sleepy little town, a place nestled between towering trees and winding streets where neighbors smiled politely, but mostly minded their own business. Life was predictable, but gentle, a welcome refuge for a single mother raising 2 children. Her days revolved around work at the local library, endless chores around their cozy home, and small cherished routines like pancakes every Saturday morning and bedtime stories whispered softly beneath warm blankets. 10-year-old Noah spent his hours absorbed in books or video games, lost in worlds beyond their modest home. But it was Laya, her spirited 6-year-old, who truly filled their house with joyful chaos. Laya lived in a vibrant universe of make-believe, creating grand adventures from nothing more than sticks, leaves, and her beloved dolls. She danced through the grass as though the lawn were her stage, spinning stories about far-off places, her imagination boundless. Caroline watched her daughter's endless energy and vivid dreams with quiet admiration, grateful for the innocence that still shimmered in her young eyes. Just next door, separated only by a weathered fence, lived Mr. Granger, a quiet farmer in his late 50s, known more for his withdrawn manner than his sparse words. After the loss of his wife, he retreated further into solitude, maintaining his small farm and rarely engaging beyond polite nods or occasional waves. Despite his quiet nature, Caroline appreciated him. Whenever something broke, a leaky pipe or a stubborn window, Mr. Granger appeared without complaint, silently fixing the problem before disappearing again. Once Laya had questioned him curiously about the barn that always remained firmly shut. He had simply replied it was to protect the animals, though no one recalled seeing livestock there for many years. Caroline never gave it much thought. Granger was a gentle, if somewhat mysterious neighbor, quietly reliable and ultimately harmless. On a warm, sunny afternoon, life seemed entirely ordinary. Birds chirped cheerfully overhead, children laughed, and bicycles hummed gently along the pavement. Caroline stood in the kitchen phone, pressed firmly to her ear, battling frustration with the insurance company about an overdue claim. Through the window, she glimpsed Laya spinning and twirling beneath the big oak tree, her little dress fluttering gently carefree and completely lost in her imaginative play. But suddenly, something tugged at Caroline's attention, a strange stillness. Her gaze settled uneasily on the yard, her pulse quickening. Laya's dolls lay scattered across the grass, the swing still gently swaying, but Laya herself was nowhere in sight. Caroline called her name, expecting her daughter's giggle from behind the tree, yet only silence responded. She stepped outside, heart racing slightly, eyes scanning every possible hiding spot. Laya! Her voice rose sharper this time, anxiety creeping in. She circled the house, peeked around every corner, checked behind shrubs and along the fence, her calls growing louder, desperation coloring her tone. But Laya was gone. Panic surged through her as she ran to neighbors' homes, knocking frantically, her voice trembling with dread. Within minutes, police cars swarmed the quiet street, officers spreading quickly into search patterns. Neighbors joined, combing through backyards, garages, sheds, and wooded trails. Mr. Granger arrived shortly after, dirt smudged on his hands, his face tight with worry as he learned what had happened. Without hesitation, he joined the search, flashlight gripped tightly, shouting Laya's name into the fading daylight, his usual reserve giving way to visible distress. Hours ticked by, painfully slow. No clues emerged, no eyewitnesses, no suspicious cars, no sound or sign of struggle. Nothing but an agonizing silence. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, an officer stumbled upon a small, heartbreaking discovery. One of Laya's tiny red shoes, partially buried in fallen leaves, near the edge of the woods. Caroline's knees weakened, recognizing instantly that lonely piece of evidence, the only fragment left behind. The days following Laya's disappearance blurred into an unbearable nightmare of police sirens, search parties, and painful unanswered questions. Volunteers came from every corner of the town, searching tirelessly, while Caroline, her voice hoarse from constant calling, endured sleepless nights filled with relentless grief. Mr. Granger continued to quietly help repairing broken porch lights, bringing Caroline soup, or simply sitting silently nearby, offering quiet solace without empty reassurances. Soon, weeks turned into months. The searchers dwindled, and eventually, the case went cold, leaving behind only posters fading on telephone poles and a hollow ache in Caroline's heart. Despite everyone's gentle encouragement to move on, Caroline clung desperately to hope, unable to imagine abandoning her daughter's memory. The house, once so full of laughter, grew silent, shadowed by memories and unanswered questions. Noah withdrew further into his own world, confused by loss, while Caroline drifted through life in a haze of sorrow, fiercely holding on to the belief that someday, somehow, her little girl would return home. As the months turned to years, Caroline's hope became a quiet, relentless ache that she nurtured silently, like an unhealed wound. The house at the end of the peaceful street seemed permanently shrouded in an aura of sadness, its once welcoming warmth now dulled by lingering grief. Noah grew steadily into a thoughtful yet somber young man, quietly bearing the unseen weight of his sister's absence. Caroline knew she should try to rebuild their lives, but each passing birthday, each missed holiday deepened the emptiness. Relatives and friends gently encouraged her to move forward, to sell the house and escape the haunting memories, but Caroline resisted. This was the last place she had seen Laya, and leaving felt like giving up. So year after year, She carefully laid out birthday presents on Laya's bed, set her place at the Christmas table, and whispered quiet prayers into the silence of an empty room. Throughout these difficult years, Mr. I. Granger remained a steady presence, though more distant now, quietly supportive, without intrusion. He occasionally stopped by with soup or fixed small household issues, always without prompting, his silent gestures of kindness, offering Caroline rare moments of comfort amidst her constant sorrow. Unlike others, who awkwardly offered empty words of reassurance, Granger's silent presence, his gentle actions without explanation or expectation made Caroline feel genuinely understood. 8 long years eventually passed, and life settled into a subdued pattern, quiet, predictable, and gently sad. Caroline had left her job at the library, unable to bear the whispered sympathies and curious glances. Instead, she turned to freelance writing, working from home, isolated but quietly productive. Noah, now 18, prepared to leave for college, his gentle demeanor reflecting both maturity and an unspoken longing for closure. Though neither mother nor son openly spoke of Laya, the quiet grief hovered persistently, shaping every interaction, every lingering gaze at the empty wing swaying gently in their front yard. One unremarkable afternoon, as Caroline stood rinsing dishes at the kitchen sink, a sudden loud pop startled her from thought. Water erupted from beneath the sink, flooding quickly onto the floor. Frustrated and panicked, she struggled fruitlessly with the valve, the stubborn metal refusing to budge. Remembering Mr. Granger's calm expertise with repairs, she dashed outside, relieved to spot him tending something near his barn. He turned immediately at her urgent call, his familiar quiet concern evident as he approached swiftly. Without hesitation, he followed her inside, silently, kneeling by the broken pipe, methodically setting to work. Caroline stood by, quietly grateful, comforted by his steady presence. Throughout the afternoon, they exchanged gentle, familiar conversation about Weather Granger's farm, and softly about the loss of his wife. Caroline empathized deeply with his quiet loneliness, recognizing in his withdrawn manner a reflection of her own grief. When the repairs were finally complete, evening had begun to settle gently over the neighborhood, the fading sunlight bathing the kitchen in soft hues. Caroline, touched by Granger's kindness, invited him to stay for dinner. He hesitated initially, clearly uncomfortable, imposing, but Caroline insisted, warmly reminding him that he was practically family. At the table, the three of them, Caroline, Noah, and Granger, shared a simple, heartfelt meal. Conversation flowed naturally, a rare moment of warmth and normalcy. Noah brightened visibly under Granger's genuine interest and praise, their easy exchange filling Caroline's heart with quiet joy. Yet, just as the evening drew to a comfortable close, Granger's phone buzzed urgently. His face tightened with sudden tension, something Caroline noticed but chose not to question. He excused himself quickly, leaving abruptly in haste. Minutes later, she noticed he had left his jacket behind, neatly folded on his chair. Deciding to return it, she stepped outside into the gathering twilight, approaching Granger's quiet farmhouse. Knocking softly at his door brought no response. Curious, Caroline moved cautiously around the property, eyes drifting toward the old barn, always locked tight, but tonight oddly unsecured, its heavy padlock hanging loosely. A faint muffled sound drifted softly from within, barely audible yet strangely insistent. Caroline hesitated, instincts prickling with unease, but compelled by a sense of duty, she stepped closer. Calling Granger's name into the silence yielded no answer, only the continued faint shuffling noises from within. Summoning courage she didn't fully understand, Caroline pushed open the barn door, her heart hammering. Dim light spilled across stacked hay bales and rusty farm tools. A heavy silence, broken only by an occasional trembling sound, drew her deeper inside. Her fingers shook as she fumbled nervously for her phone instinct, guiding her to dial for help. When police arrived, the quiet farm was suddenly alive with flashing lights and tense voices. Caroline waited anxiously outside, heart frozen in dread. Moments later, an officer's urgent call brought reinforcements rushing into the barn. Hidden behind stacked hay and a cleverly concealed wall, a small locked door led to a narrow hidden room. Inside, curled up in frightened silence, clutching a worn stuffed bunny, was a young girl with wide, haunted eyes. Caroline's breath caught painfully in her chest, recognition crashing over her in waves. It was Laya, alive, trembling, but undeniably hers. Years of grief lifted and shattered in a single overwhelming instant as mother and daughter locked eyes through tears. Caroline's knees buckled beneath the weight of disbelief, her whispered, anguished voice breaking through sobs of relief. "Laya, I found you!" In that overwhelming moment, as flashing red and blue lights sliced through the darkness outside the barn, Caroline felt as if time itself stood still. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, her breath catching painfully, as Laya emerged, fragile and trembling, eyes wide with confusion. The girl clutched tightly, a tattered grey stuffed bunny, worn down to a single ear, the relic of a stolen childhood. Caroline, paralyzed by shock and disbelief, finally managed to whisper her daughter's name. Laya. Her voice was choked with emotion, the word both plea and prayer. Laya hesitated, looking uncertainly at the chaos unfolding around her. Then her eyes locked onto Caroline's face. Recognition sparked through her confusion, flooding her eyes with tears. Mom. The word was barely audible, yet it shattered the silence like thunder. Thank you for choosing my video among thousands of videos out there to watch. Helping me with a subscription of yours is very small but very big and too valuable. Caroline rushed forward, wrapping her arms fiercely around her daughter, desperately afraid this was only a cruel dream. I've searched for you every day, Caroline sobbed, holding Laya tightly as if afraid to ever let go again. Laya clung fiercely to her mother, burying her face in Caroline's shoulder, whispering brokenly, I thought you forgot about me. Never, Caroline assured, her voice shaking with conviction. Not for a single moment. Officers moved gently around them, deeply affected by the raw emotion of the reunion, softly explaining to Caroline that Laya needed medical attention. Although every maternal instinct screamed at her to hold on to her child, Caroline understood. She gripped her daughter's hand tightly as paramedics carefully guided Laya toward the waiting ambulance. The girl glanced fearfully around, overwhelmed by unfamiliar faces and the surreal whirlwind of activity, but Caroline never let go, murmuring reassuring words with each step. Amidst the chaotic scene, Mr. Granger appeared rushing up the gravel driveway, his expression rapidly shifting from confusion to dread as he saw police officers swarming around the barn. Groceries spilled from his dropped bag, scattering across the ground forgotten. His face drained of color, eyes darting in panic between Caroline, the officers, and the open barn doors. "No," he murmured brokenly, sinking heavily to his knees, shaking hands raised weakly in surrender. He did not resist as the police approached his voice, trembling with shame and sorrow. "I never meant to hurt her," he pleaded desperately, his eyes locked on Caroline silently, begging her to understand. "She looked just like my Emily. Same smile, same eyes. I thought she was sent to heal me." As the officers cuffed him gently but firmly, Granger continued to speak softly, his voice heavy with remorse. He confessed openly to having lured Laya into his barn 8 years ago, telling her there were baby goats to see. From that innocent moment, he had hidden her away, constructing a secret room within the barn, hoping she could fill the empty void left by his lost daughter. "I never harmed her," he repeated brokenly, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I cared for her, fed her, gave her books. I thought I was saving her from a world that seemed to have forgotten." Caroline listened numbly, every word a blow to her heart. The man she trusted, welcomed into her home, who had quietly comforted her. Through grief, this man had stolen her child, holding her captive, mere steps away. She felt betrayal so deep it nearly consumed her, yet mingled inexplicably with grief for the man before her, broken by his own overwhelming loss. In the days that followed Granger's arrest, Caroline existed within a surreal blur. Laya was hospitalized, carefully tended by specialists who delicately navigated the fragile landscape of her recovery. Physically unharmed but deeply traumatized, she struggled silently, overwhelmed by the enormity of returning to a world that had moved on without her. Caroline remained steadfastly by her daughter's bedside, offering quiet reassurance, patiently waiting through long silences and hesitant interactions. Each small step Laya took, speaking softly, meeting Caroline's gaze, or cautiously smiling, was a profound victory. Despite Laya's slow progress, Caroline found herself tormented by self-doubt and guilt. Each glance from her kitchen window at Granger's now empty property brought renewed anguish, a relentless reminder of how blind she had been. She questioned herself endlessly, agonizing over missed signs, subtle hints she might have noticed if only she'd looked closer. The community reeled in shock, grappling with the disturbing realization of Granger's hidden darkness. Neighbors gathered together openly, expressing regret, their hearts heavy with the shared burden of ignorance and unspoken suspicions. The quiet, trusting neighborhood suddenly felt forever altered, now watchful, cautious, protective in ways they had never been before. Yet, amidst collective grief and guilt, the community also rallied together, providing Caroline and her family an outpouring of support. Quiet vigils, thoughtful meals left at her doorstep, and gentle messages of encouragement poured forth, offering solace in a time of unbearable upheaval. Slowly, painfully healing began not just for Laya and Caroline, but for an entire town forced to confront the harsh reality lurking behind familiar faces and polite smiles. Caroline's home gradually transformed from a silent place of mourning into one of fragile hope. As Laya slowly reclaimed pieces of herself, learning again how to trust and rebuild the innocence cruelly taken from her, Caroline found strength in her daughter's quiet resilience. The long years stolen from them could never be restored, but the unbreakable bond of mother and daughter tested and proven stronger than any darkness would lead them forward together. For Caroline, seeing Laya's tentative smile return was not just the promise of recovery. It was the quiet miracle she had dreamed of every single day for 8 years. As weeks passed, the harsh spotlight gradually dimmed, leaving Caroline and Laya to quietly navigate the long road toward healing. Their house, once frozen in time, began to slowly breathe again, filling with soft conversations, cautious laughter, and gentle routines rebuilt piece by piece. Laya's physical recovery was swift, yet her emotional healing proved painstakingly delicate. The trauma of captivity had carved deep wounds, leaving her withdrawn, hesitant, and struggling to reacquaint herself with a world she'd forgotten. Caroline devoted herself entirely to her daughter, patiently guiding her through simple, comforting rituals, making pancakes together on Saturday mornings, reading bedtime stories, and carefully nurturing Laya's fragile trust. Therapists visited frequently, helping Laya untangle her complicated emotions and fears. Progress was slow yet genuine. Small victories, like the day Laya timidly ventured outside to touch the familiar swing, or when she giggled softly at Noah's jokes, felt monumental. Noah, now 18, initially struggled with his own complicated feelings, joyful yet burdened by the return of a sister who felt more like a stranger. Yet gradually, he became her quiet protector, gently helping her navigate unfamiliar moments and silently sharing the heavy emotional weight his mother bore. Caroline watched her children slowly reconnect their relationship, healing gently, strengthened by quiet understanding born of shared pain. As Laya began to reclaim small pieces of a normal life, Caroline remained haunted by lingering guilt, burdened by thoughts of how close she had been to her child all those lost years. Each glance toward the barn was a painful reminder of her perceived blindness, a relentless question echoing, how could she have missed it? Friends and neighbors repeatedly assured her she couldn't have known, yet their reassurances did little to quiet the voice of doubt whispering persistently in her heart. The community, deeply shaken collectively, vowed to prevent anything similar from happening again. Neighbors, once polite strangers, forged stronger connections, checking in regularly, offering practical help, and creating a protective vigilance that transformed the previously quiet streets. No one would ignore subtle signs again. No one would dismiss quiet oddities as harmless eccentricities. The tragedy had forever changed them, fostering deeper empathy and unity in place of detached politeness. Meanwhile, Mr. Granger's arrest and confession had left the community grappling with complex feelings of betrayal and sorrow. Many had known him as a quiet yet helpful neighbor, never suspecting his tragic secrets. His courtroom confession, openly remorseful yet undeniably painful, filled Caroline with confusion and anger, yet also deep sadness. She wrestled internally, torn between fury at his betrayal and empathy for the grief-stricken man who had so desperately tried to fill his emptiness with someone else's child. She found little comfort in knowing justice was served, as nothing could restore the stolen years. Months after the ordeal, Caroline sat quietly one evening watching Laya, curled on the sofa, gently stroking her battered stuffed bunny. She saw resilience and strength hidden beneath her daughter's quiet exterior, a delicate yet undeniable hope beginning to bloom. Soft footsteps behind her broke Caroline's reverie. Noah settled quietly beside her, his expression gentle but serious. "Mom," he said softly, "it's not your fault. You never gave up. You always believed she'd come home." Caroline's eyes filled with tears, grateful for her son's quiet reassurance. "But I should have known," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have protected her." Noah shook his head, his voice firm yet gentle. "You did protect her in every way you possibly could. You never stopped loving her, never stopped waiting. That matters." His words echoed deeply, helping Caroline slowly accept the truth she'd struggled to grasp. Her love, unwavering and fierce, had kept their bond intact even through the unimaginable darkness. With time, she began to shed the weight of blame, gradually turning her focus toward building a future, rather than dwelling endlessly on past regrets. Life continued forward cautiously but steadily. Caroline resumed writing, finding comfort in sharing stories of resilience and hope, channeling her own experiences into words that might offer strength to others. She spoke publicly occasionally, gently raising awareness about vigilance, community responsibility, and the complex nature of grief and healing. Her quiet strength became an inspiration to many who silently struggled with their own hidden pain. Laya slowly reintegrated into school, supported by compassionate teachers and friends, carefully guided to understand and accept her delicate history. She remained reserved, yet began tentatively forming friendships, carefully rediscovering joy in simple everyday moments previously stolen from her. One bright afternoon, nearly a year after her rescue, Caroline watched from the window as Laya laughed softly with a new friend. Their dolls spread across the lawn beneath the same oak tree she'd once played under. Tears welled in Caroline's eyes, not from sorrow, but from quiet, profound gratitude. Laya's laughter, fragile but growing stronger, echoed gently like music, proof that healing, however painful, was possible. Their journey would never erase the trauma, nor fully restore lost years. Yet, the quiet miracle of seeing Laya genuinely smile again felt like an affirmation that hope, even in the darkest moments, could ultimately triumph. Caroline finally understood that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant living fully again despite the scars. The darkest chapters in their lives had shown her the unbreakable strength hidden within quiet love, relentless hope, and the courage to slowly rebuild. And as she stood watching her daughter beneath that oak tree, Caroline knew in her heart they were truly home, bruised yet stronger, wounded yet finally healing. With each passing season, Caroline's household found a steady, comforting rhythm, a gentle dance toward a new normalcy, blending past and present into something hopeful yet grounded in resilience. Laya, once shy and withdrawn, began embracing life with cautious enthusiasm, rediscovering the simple pleasures of childhood that had long been denied her. Days filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and gentle reassurances gradually replaced anxious silences and cautious glances. She learned to trust again tentatively, reaching out to classmates, attending birthday parties, and smiling more easily. Caroline cherished each of these fragile victories, treasuring every whispered secret and every unexpected burst of laughter, knowing how hard-won these moments truly were. Noah left for college, but remained a steady, supportive presence, visiting often and serving as a protective, reassuring figure in Laya's continued healing journey. He navigated his own emotional complexities with maturity, quietly proud of how far their family had come, honoring the past without allowing it to overshadow their future. The bond between brother and sister deepened, gently rebuilt patiently through shared experiences, quiet understandings, and an unspoken vow to always protect and support one another. Caroline, for her part, found purpose in speaking publicly about their experience, gently yet firmly advocating for vigilance, community responsibility, and compassion. She wrote deeply, personal essays, carefully exploring themes of grief, resilience, and forgiveness, helping others who had faced unimaginable challenges find comfort and strength. Gradually, she came to terms with her lingering feelings toward Mr. Granger, not forgiveness exactly, but a quiet, thoughtful acceptance of his broken humanity. His actions were unforgivable, yet she began to recognize that beneath his crimes lay a profound and tragic loneliness that she could never fully understand. Caroline acknowledged her anger, but refused to let bitterness define her, choosing instead to focus on healing and hope. As their community healed collectively, the once quiet town grew into something different, warmer and more connected, transformed through shared trauma and collective recovery. Neighbors watched out for one another with gentle vigilance, more attentive now to subtle signs of distress or isolation. Children played freely, but were watched closely, while parents and neighbors stayed connected, never again taking each other's well-being for granted. The barn, once a stark reminder of hidden horrors, was quietly dismantled. Its removal symbolized a collective desire for closure, allowing Caroline and the community to release the physical reminder of pain and loss. In its place grew wildflowers, vibrant, delicate blooms that represented hope, healing, and new beginnings. Caroline watched Laya flourish as the years continued gently onward. Her daughter, now a teenager, displayed quiet confidence, her resilience clear in each gentle interaction and every brave step forward. She remained compassionate, kind, and sensitive traits deepened rather than diminished by her experiences. Occasionally, she shared her story quietly, courageously offering strength to others facing trauma, reassuring them that healing, though slow, was possible. On a particularly bright spring day, Caroline stood near their front yard watching Laya, sitting beneath the old oak tree, her laughter carefree and radiant as she shared stories with friends. It was the same spot where innocence had been brutally interrupted all those years ago. Yet now, it symbolized rebirth, resilience, and the gentle triumph of quiet hope. Caroline felt her heart swell with gratitude, marveling quietly at the strength they'd found in one another, the depth of resilience she hadn't realized they possessed. In that moment, Caroline understood deeply that while their past was etched permanently into their lives, it no longer defined them. They had weathered the worst together and emerged stronger, gentler, and more compassionate. Grief had taught them humility, pain had fostered resilience, and healing had revealed the quiet, unshakable power of love. Their story would always carry shadows, yet Caroline chose to embrace the warmth and light woven through those shadows, the unexpected grace found in laughter, in small, ordinary moments, and in the courage to keep moving forward. The journey toward healing would never be complete, but Caroline felt peace, knowing that each step forward honored their strength, honored their love, and honored the life they'd reclaimed from darkness. Standing there, beneath the warmth of the afternoon sun, Caroline knew, without question, that their home once marked by tragedy was finally and fully restored, not by erasing the past, but by learning, growing, and gently choosing hope each and every day. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Your support truly means the world to me. If this video brought you value or resonated with you in any way, feel free to leave a little comment or hit subscribe so we can keep sharing more moments together. See you in the next one.